Well, hello. Sorry. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Southern Summers and Northern Winters, our new podcast covering traveling with families or traveling as a family, traveling with kids. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm good, Anders. How are you today?
I am really good. I am really good. And let's just right off the bat mention that Mark and I are physically situated. I don't think we could be further apart, Mark. This is
Definitely not. I don't know for sure, but I would think that there's not too many further places away than Munich and a small country town near Melbourne in Australia.
no, no. So, but I don't know. I haven't even seen. We could probably Google this, the distance in kilometers. But yeah, I am in Central Europe, southern Germany, Munich, and Mark, as mentioned, near Melbourne in Australia. Mark, let's start off. How did you and I get to connect in the first place? Why are we even here?
Well, I think we met or online maybe around, I would say 2000 and probably around 2016 when you and your family had a family travel blog and me and my family had a family travel blog. And I'm sure we met on quite possibly on Twitter or some sort of Facebook family
Correct.
travel forum that we would have
Yeah.
both been in at that stage. So that's how we first touched base. And since then, I think we have met three times,
Correct.
twice in Munich, maybe in 2017 in Munich and 2019. And we also shared a cup of coffee and a pastry at Copenhagen Airport one morning when we happened to be
Yes,
crossing paths.
that's true. I'd actually that had slipped my mind. That's true. Yeah.
We did. It slipped my
Yes.
mind too. I was thinking about it yesterday. I was thinking, we've only met Anders and his family twice. And I thought, no, we met him at Copenhagen Airport too,
Yes,
which was
that's true.
only a few days, I think, or a few weeks after we'd actually caught up with you in Munich. But you happened to be going through Copenhagen for business or something, and
Yes, that's correct.
we were coming from Reykjavik in Iceland to Copenhagen, and then onto Dubrovnik. So yeah, it all just sort of fell in line for a cup of coffee and another chat at a random airport. Well, not random, but at an airport in
Yeah.
like a sliding doors moment, wasn't it? You were going
Yeah,
one way, we
it
were
really
going the other
was.
way.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
was. It was and yeah, well, you have to grab every opportunity you can to catch up and thankfully we have modern technology to connect globally with like-minded people. And you and I, we are actually a very good example of that. Just
Most definitely.
how online acquaintances can turn into real life friendships. Because I feel I'm privileged to really consider you and your family as friends, and we enjoy very much interacting
Yeah.
online and now also through this podcast.
It's
Um,
definitely. I've met some cracking people like online that I've then met in real life, like a number of different families, as you probably have as well,
yes,
in our travels around the world. Whether we've and have kept in touch with a lot of them on online. I've got like number of friends that we've gone back and visited on numerous occasions when we've gone overseas that we've met. So yeah, it sort of really opens up the world to you. Like once upon a time, I couldn't imagine that I would be, I guess, sitting here talking to a friend that I met overseas just on the internet now and having a random chat about something we both love, which is travel.
yeah, exactly. How did you get into travel in the first place? How did that all start?
Being from a small country town, I always wanted to see the world. Our little town of 4,000 people certainly wasn't a huge on experiences. And when I think about it a bit, my dad was a bit of a traveler. Never went anywhere, but it was always excited about going on holidays and things like that, like even locally. So I think that sort of gave me a little bit of excitement about doing things. I remember as a kid, going packing the car up with a tent, and we drove from Maffra all the way to north coast of New South Wales, up near Coffs Harbour, which would have been when I think about it, possibly 18 hours in a car. But, I remember stopping along the way, and my mum used to always tell me a story about me as a 4-year-old running up and down the stairs of the Sydney Opera House with no shoes on and things like that, and being a little rascal or a rat bag, as they might say over here. So they probably sowed the seeds of my traveling adventures. And then when I got old enough, I took off by myself for the first time in about 1999 and headed to Europe for a bit of a short vacation and stayed with some cousins in northern England in a place called St Helens, which is near in between Manchester and Liverpool. And then I jumped on a tour and did a bit of a tour around Europe before coming home, which definitely then embedded a love for wanting to see more of the world than my little town.
Yeah, interesting. It's one thing for a European like me, thinking about going 18 hours in a car. I mean, you're still in the same country. Uh, I guess you could say Australia is a continent, really.
Yeah.
And for me, like 18 hours in a car, it's like you go through three, four, five, six countries here in Europe. It's
You'd nearly drive into the Middle East or Asia in 18 hours
yeah,
from Germany, wouldn't you?
yeah,
Like you'd
yeah.
surely get to Turkey in 18 hours, wouldn't you?
Yes,
Like I'm not sure, but
from where I'm sitting, yes, you would. You would
yeah.
indeed.
So
Yeah. So
so yeah,
yeah,
you'd be driving onto a different continent.
absolutely. Yeah, Turkey. Yeah, that's Middle East. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Middle
Yes.
East, Asia, Europe. It has its foot in all continents. I think Turkey does, depending on where the political landscape is at any one time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Turkey is it's a huge, yeah, because it stretches from in the east, the Mediterranean Sea, and
Yeah.
all the way, um, I don't know, thousands of kilometers of wow,
Yeah, into
it's huge.
Central
Yeah,
Asia and
yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
down the bottom it borders Syria, I think, or one of them countries.
yeah.
Or yeah, so
Have you been to Turkey?
I have not been to Turkey,
Me
and I really
neither.
want to go.
No,
I
yeah,
really want to go to Turkey.
yeah,
Uh, I want to go to Turkey for a number of reasons. It looks really interesting, but from an Australian point of view, there's a long there's a long history of Australians in Turkey, especially World War history from World War One. There's a place called Anzac Cove that we celebrate Anzac Day every year in Australia
yeah,
to commemorate these people that died on the beaches of Gallipoli, which is in Turkey. So there's a lot of Australians that make a pilgrimage there every year to celebrate that. That wouldn't be my main reason, but I'd certainly like to go and have a look
yeah,
at that area.
yeah, yeah. It's one of the things that because I mean. For a number of reasons, Turkey is, at least in Europe, is in the debates about the political landscape and all. The good thing about traveling, like we do, is we come across all kinds of cultures and political opinions, and it's just it's hard to completely ignore politics, but usually you and I don't engage with professional politicians, and
No.
it's just but so we meet regular people, and
Yeah,
regular people is,
definitely.
are always nice.
You know, you would like to think that travel sort of transcends that sort of stuff, because as travelers, none of us are going there to be political in any way, shape,
No,
or form. What other countries do is what other countries do, and whether I agree with it or not, it's their country and it's their culture, and it's sometimes up to their people. Not necessarily foreigners coming in and out.
if anything, I think traveling can actually, open your eyes, because usually people sit at home and they look through their own eyes, and consider the entire world through own how do you say that, own values that you're used to,
Yeah,
that you
definitely.
live by in your everyday life. But getting out there and seeing other cultures, experiencing other cultures, interacting with local people will, if anything, broaden your horizon. And that's just the wonderful thing about it's so enriching, really,
Well, that's
traveling.
one of the best reasons to actually take kids traveling. If you can expose them to different cultures, different religions, different ways of life, I believe that they'll be more tolerant and adaptable adults. Who
Yeah,
are far more easier to accept different views and things like that, then because if they've experienced, for say, without sounding bad or anything, like, they've been to Muslim countries, they've been to, places in Africa, I guess, where there's poverty, they've watched politicians talk about, different things that they may not agree with. And hopefully, when you expose your kids to this sort of broad church or broad thoughts of ideas, then that they can take them in and then realize, like what I said, that not all the world's the same and not everyone's going to be the same as us, but you just got to take from it what you can, learn,
Yeah.
and move on.
We had that exact same philosophy when our son was only 3 years old, barely 3 years old when we left on we had a 1 year journey around the world in 2013 and 2014. And it was for that exact reason that we wanted him to, experience all kinds of nature, all kinds of people. We did only travel in safe countries, I would say. I mean, we went to Australia, New Zealand, USA, Ireland, England, but if it was for that reason that seeing the world as early as possible in your life will certainly broaden your horizon. And even today he's 14, and I can say, um, his mind is open, in many ways, to the world, and he likes to, before even uh, making a personal opinion about anything, he likes to, do his research and read up on stuff, and try to see things from many perspectives. And so I guess we succeeded on that one. That was certainly our intention, and we try to live by it. Although you can always fall into a pit where you say, "Oh, these and these and these people, they are always like that and that." But
Yeah.
we're only humans.
Well, and that's it. You can only take people at face value, I guess. So, and like we said, you meet a lot of people in your travels from a lot of different backgrounds, and you try and take the best bits from it
Yeah.
and learn and develop your own opinions from meeting lots of different people, and
Yeah.
go on from there. Like there's a lot of people, I guess, in this world today with a lot of strong opinions about things. Their opinion may not be my opinion, but my opinion may not be right, and theirs may not be right. But we all should be tolerant of what each other thinks, I
Exactly.
guess, and be respectful.
Exactly.
Be respectful of that.
I remember once, that was no, it was in New Zealand. We visited on the Southern Island. We visited a sheep station, which was also or still is, a bed and breakfast, I guess. And there was a guy there named Tony, and he had traveled a lot, and he had opened up this bed and breakfast in order to stay connected to the world, because New Zealand is pretty far away.
Fantastic
And
idea.
I guess he knew that he wasn't going to be able to travel indefinite, indefinitely. So he settled down there, but he made sure that he had a way to connect with people from all over the world. And he talked about this, overseas experience. Have you had an overseas experience? That was his term. And he preferred to get into deeper discussion. He would engage with anyone, but getting into a more substantial discussion, um, when people had some perspective to add, and
Most
getting
definitely.
around is the way to do that.
Well, it is. I think I said this earlier in a chat before we recorded this, that I often think that it's too easy to think that where you live is how the world is, and
Yeah.
that's certainly not correct. There's a big world out there, and it will be definitely different than where you live in every country you go to, every state of every country you go to,
Yeah.
and possibly every 50 kilometers up the road. Like,
True.
will be
Yeah.
different than where you live. So, there's a big world to explore, and we need to get out there and explore it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the foundation, to any listener still here? This is the foundation for the podcast. This is why we do this. We love to talk about well, the act of traveling as a theme in itself, but also what traveling brings to you as a human being. So one of the things
Most
we
definitely.
one of the things we talked about in one of our early chats as well, Mark, was the importance of having a valid passport. That was it was one of these. Maybe we should say that these conversations are unscripted. We have an
Yeah.
overall topic, um, but we will wander down paths that just through the art of conversation. This is where we
There'll be many
go.
back streets and alleys explored.
Yeah, exactly. So, but one of the things that came up was the importance of actually having a valid passport, which, to my surprise, as it turns out, is not something that all people have on their radar, apparently.
No, this is true. And a lot of people who do even actually have a valid passport often forget to check it. The amount of stories I read on Facebook in travel groups about people going to the airport tomorrow, but then realizing that their passport is out of
Yeah,
date in 2 months or something like that. What can I do? What can I do? Well, I don't think you can do anything the day beforehand. But
exactly. I was surprised because, I mean, maybe it's just the way I was brought up. You have your official papers in order. That has always been, and you can't say, well, a passport is not a necessity. Well, it is if you want to travel internationally. So for me, a passport was always, well, we need to make sure that we have at least 6 months um, uh, rest time of the
yeah,
valid period.
validity. Yeah, for sure.
Validity, yeah. Yeah, it's because there are countries that won't let you in if you have less.
No, and not even just with 6 months left. If your passport's got a crease in it or a tear in it or a watermark, I see more and more of that lately.
Yeah.
That they don't let you in. I don't know. I don't really know what that has to do with it not being valid, unless the watermark or the rip is where the chip that they put in them these days is. But
Yeah.
other than that, I think it's just being a little bit picky. But but
There are
hey,
there are there are there are customs agents or the border patrol people who will take pleasure in just harassing you with that, because I mean, really, if you have a chipped passport nowadays, it really shouldn't be an issue.
no,
Um,
not at all.
no, but yeah, it's because, I mean, passports hopefully will get worn and torn. I mean, the more stamps you have in them, and
Yep,
it's
most
just
definitely. But the whole stamp in the passport is disappearing, isn't it?
yeah,
Like,
it is.
a lot of countries no longer have a stamp. I know Australia no longer stamps their passports. I've been to a few different countries that no longer stamp their passports. Indonesia has just taken this up as well. We used to go to Bali and line up in a line to get stamped in. Now they've joined the modern times and got the electronic gates where you just go up and scan your passport underneath, and it opens up and lets you through. That's for sure. I can tell you, China still puts a stamp on their passport and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would
still
imagine they
rigorously
do.
looks at your passport for
Yeah.
for a
But
good few minutes. And
so if I came to Australia tomorrow and came with my, well, I have a Danish passport. I wouldn't get anything visible to tell me how long my temporary visa would work.
well, that I don't know, because you
Okay.
have to apply for an entry, don't
Yeah.
you? I
Oh, yeah,
think
that's
for
true. Yeah.
overseas
Yeah.
people. So I
Yeah.
don't know whether that actually gets pasted into your passport. I don't know whether you have. No, I don't think it does, because I reckon that you just apply for it online, and you would get a
Yeah.
printout. I remember going to Vietnam, and that's what we had to do in Vietnam. We just applied it online, got a printout, showed them the copy of it when we went through, and they would just stamp it. And but then again, like you said, Australia doesn't stamp it. I assume there would be data and biometrical data to say when you entered the country, and if you went out too
Yeah.
long, then they would surely tell you about it, I would
And
think.
in the airport, I mean, you go through immigration anyway. They still have immigration at the airport, so they want to check
Yes,
your papers.
that's it.
And I remember going to New Zealand. We did get a stamp the stamp said, 3 months from from this day, and it would actually say which date was the last valid date to leave the
Yeah.
country again. So, it's just, I mean, I'm just thinking practically here. It is always nice if you forget, when do we actually have to leave? We knew this when we
Well,
were traveling, but it's a nice thing to have that confirmed
it can be
black and white.
confusing. You're
It
correct.
can,
You're
it can.
correct. When our family traveled long term in 2019 for about 14 months, and we spent some of that time in Europe. For Australians and a lot of people outside of Europe, you've got to abide by the Schengen rule, which means that you
Yes,
can only spend 60 days, no, 90 days out of every
yes,
180 days, I think, in the
correct.
European
Yeah,
Union.
yeah.
So that can be hard to juggle. There's a lot of counters online that I used because we were popping in and out of the European Union at that time because you went to England and that was
That's
different. It didn't
outside.
count,
Yeah,
even though
yeah,
even though England was in the EU. I think at that stage it was outside of the Schengen
yeah.
rule for some reason. So if you went there or you went to Croatia or there was a few other different countries down there, Montenegro, places like that that weren't in the Schengen. So I had to have a counter an app on my phone that would tell me, okay, when are my days up and when can I go back into the EU after my valid time's up. But you can also get around it being an Australian. We actually have a bilateral visa agreement with a lot of countries that I didn't really know, including Germany. Australians go to Germany for 90 days outside of the Schengen,
Oh, okay.
because we have a bilateral visa agreement. But I actually wrote to the German embassy in Australia to ask them about this, and he sent me an email. They did, and they said, but what you really actually have to do is you need to fly into Germany first, and you need to tell the border guard, "Hey, I'm here on a 90-day bilateral agreement that you have with Australia, so it's outside of my Schengen
So you can
time."
actually have the 90 days on top of the internal
The other
EU.
90 days.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah, you can. You're not meant to leave Germany, but back then, or even now, even though I did read that they have reinstated some borders in Germany. Is this correct? I don't know. I read this the other
Yeah, it
day
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that there's some checks going on again. But so
Yes.
back when we were doing that, there was none. So we had friends in Freiburg, so I would have, which is close to the border of France and Switzerland. Like, so I assumed back then I would have just been able to get in a car and drive over the border, and they would never have known that I was leaving Germany on my bilateral visa agreement. But I suppose if you got caught outside of it on it, then your Schengen visa would probably start, and you'd waste your 90 days. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah, you would probably have an hour or two of just, having to explain yourself. But
yeah,
they
definitely.
would probably just, things would be
Yeah,
be sorted out, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because they were strong on that. Like the guy from the German embassy said, you must stay in Germany for that 90 days, and you must not leave Germany because that's if you're on this 90-day bilateral visa agreement, that's where you're going, and do not leave.
Yeah.
Because if you get caught, then then you'll be considered to be on your 90 days of Schengen
Yeah.
visa.
We had an experience. We had on our world tour, we had around the world ticket booked. I mean, around the world ticket. We can get into that in a later episode. But around the world ticket is you use an airline alliance and you book all your major flights, your long haul flights, in one row, and you follow the same route or the same direction around the globe. And you can do this. You can book your ticket. We did it for a year, so we had all the major stops for 12 months. We had them already booked, and whatever we would do internally in each country, we would just book separately. But we
Yeah,
entered the United States, and the travel agency that we had booked the around the world ticket through, they had made a mistake. They had taken 3 calendar months. So I think we arrived on the 3rd of November, and we thought we had until December, January, February, 3rd of February or March, but no, 3rd of March, no, 3rd of February. Sorry, I can't count the months. So until the 3rd of February, but it turned out they were counting 90 days, not 3 calendar months, but
Three
90 days.
months,
So there
yeah,
was actually, I think there was a discrepancy of 2 days.
couple of days, yeah,
And
definitely,
the Border Patrol, they didn't care. They said, these are
yeah,
the rules. And we had a ticket where we were supposed to leave like 2 days later than our visa would allow. So so we had a heated discussion with our travel agency because I mean we had
yeah,
we had an agreement with them. They had sorted out the tickets for us. That's what we paid them
definitely,
for. But it was sorted. They had to rebook the flights at their cost.
yeah,
So all was good.
as they should.
Yeah, as they should. This was fine. There was nothing there, but it just we had to take the discussion, and we had a day or two where we just, oh man, what are we going to do if this doesn't work out, which obviously it did. I mean, but still, you had some stress
I've
there.
fallen, I've fallen into that trap before myself because first time I went to Asia, I'd only actually been to Europe before, and so most places in Europe were 60 or 90 days. So when I went to Asia the first time, I just assumed that you had 60 or 90 days, and I landed in Indonesia, and I had booked like 35 days or something like that. And but you could only get a 30-day
Wow. Yeah.
30-day visa. So I actually had to go to immigration in Bali while I was there to extend it. It was no hassle, but yeah, it was just, it cost extra money, obviously, to extend your visa that I
Obviously.
wasn't
Yeah.
planning on
Yeah.
spending at that
Yeah.
stage. But
Yeah.
but hey, these things happen, don't they, to all of us, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, the importance of having a valid passport is and in general have your visas and travel papers in order um, is something we
Most
can cover,
definitely.
probably are going to cover many times
Yeah.
in this podcast series because it always comes up and it's just so important at any point in time when you travel internationally. It's really how I wanted to ask you this. There's a list of the best passports in the world and where they will allow you to travel. Where does Australia rank on this?
I don't know if it's all that high, to be honest with you. I know that I don't know any countries that we're not allowed to travel to. That's for sure. There probably is. I mean, yeah, but I don't really know. But I know one
Okay.
thing about Australian passports, and that is that they are the dearest passport to obtain
Oh
in
yeah.
the world. An Australian passport for 10 years will cost you 400 Australian dollars or about 250, 260 euros. So for 10 years. So it's a lot of money. Well, most people think it's a lot of money. The Treasurer of Australia, he doesn't think it's a lot of money. He says it's great value at $40 a year. But then when I hear people who only pay, the equivalent of 100 or $150 Australian a year, and I think, well, they're $15 or $10 a month sounds way better value than my $40 a month, especially when
Sure.
there's four of you that you have to pay
Yeah.
for these sort of prices.
The in Germany it's about 70, 80 euros, and in Denmark a little higher. My Danish passport is I think about 110, 120 euros. It's a little less for our teenage son because it's only 5 years validity. So it's a little cheaper, but still, it's nowhere near what you guys in Australia pay. It's obscene amounts.
Well, this is true. So actually, I just quickly looked up what you asked me. Is it powerful? The Australian passport is among the top five most powerful in the world, according to new rankings. So
Oh, there you
apparently, we're
go.
up from joint eighth last year. So I'm not quite sure what strength actually means. Does it mean the amount of countries that you get into? I don't know. Like, I don't know anywhere you can't really go. Can you? Is there? I mean, there's probably a few countries that are banned, and each country has. Australia has this thing called Smart Traveller, I think it's called, and they have it's run by the government, so they give you warnings on countries you can go to or countries you really shouldn't go to. And in reality, you should follow that because a lot of travel insurance can be null and void if you go to a country that's on the list by your home government that says you shouldn't go there.
Oh yeah.
So that's an interesting one. If you go there and get stuck, and the government has put out a warning and said that countries, only for, you only really go there if you've got family or things like that, and you go
Yeah.
there and something happens. Well, yeah, your travel insurance will say, well, you're stuck there, so go start a GoFundMe page and go for your life.
Just out of curiosity, what's the top five there? You said Australia is in the top
Let me
five.
have a look. Yeah, where was I? I just had this page here. I think it said Singapore was number one.
Oh wow.
Singapore. Okay, so it does go by locations. So Singapore, you can go to 195 locations. France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and Spain are equal second, apparently, at 192 different
Wow.
locations. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it goes on the amount of locations that you can go
Wow.
to. I wonder if it takes into consideration whether you need visas and things like that for countries. I know, being Australian, we need a visa nearly to go everywhere. And a lot of that's not just because of who we are, it's because we require people to have a visa to come to our country. So it's a bit like, tic tac, like,
Quid pro
a lot of
quo.
these yeah, that's it. If you're gonna make our people pay a
Yes.
visa to get in, we're going to make your people pay visas to
Yes.
get in, and that happens nearly all over Asia.
That's how
Actually, I can't.
diplomacy works.
Yeah, I can't really think of a country we've been to in Asia, possibly besides maybe Singapore, where you didn't need a visa. I think you didn't need one in Thailand. I think they granted it on arrival, but I can't remember whether I had to actually pay for it or not. So,
Yeah.
but definitely countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, they all required visas to go there. So that were, relatively, I don't know, they're probably expensive. They're probably over, $100 for all of us, or $150, maybe 40. Actually, I think we got a lot of visas done when we were, quite funnily, in Vientiane in Laos,
Oh,
which is the capital city, which is a really strange place to get visas done. We happened to be there for about 10 days. It was a very exciting city, and we didn't know that at the time. So we were just sort of lobbed there. So while we were there, we did a bit of a lap, and we went and got a Cambodian visa while we were there. We went and got a Chinese visa while we were there. So we were doing the laps of all the embassies while we were there at that
yeah.
stage. So
Oh,
so yeah, but it was quite easy, and like you can get a lot of visas on the border, but I was told that going from Thailand to Cambodia, you might have to pay a bribe at the border if you haven't got one, and you'll have to pay this and that. So I
oh,
thought,
yeah.
if I go and get one at the embassy, then I've already got the visa, and they can't say that you need to pay all these extra fees and things like
Yeah.
that. So I sort
Yeah.
of I sort of cut it off by preempting it and getting visas at home or at the embassy whenever I can, instead of on the border if possible, especially in Asia.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier, if you realize that your passport is no longer valid the day before you have to leave, you have a serious situation. Obviously, it's solvable. It will probably cost you a lot of extra money, and I guess
Yeah,
in Australia you would have to physically travel to a place where they actually issue passports to
yeah.
even get it into your hands. But what's the normal sort of service time from ordering to actually having the passport physically in your hands? What's that around where you live?
I think at the moment in Australia it's around 10 days to 2 weeks, but during COVID, once COVID finished, Australians wanted to travel, and Australians were putting the foot down, and we wanted to get out of
Understandably
here
so, yeah.
because we had some of the strictest lockdown rules in the world at that
Yeah,
stage. And at that stage, the passport office had blown out to around 10 weeks to get a passport because there was that many people
yeah,
looking for new passports. So yeah, it was really crazy at that stage. So, but hence that's why the government justified putting their passports up to $400, because we have to make more presses, and we have to modernize it, and we have to streamline the process to make it faster and all things like
yeah.
that. So,
Uh,
so
is
yeah,
it
but
is
apparently you
it
can get
is
an
the
emergency
procedure
passport in 24 hours.
within 24 hours? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it does say this here on the
At
internet.
an
Not
extra
that I've ever
cost,
had
yeah.
to. Oh yeah, I'm sure there'd be a big cost, I would think. Like,
Is the procedure easy? Because this is another thing. I'm situated in Germany, and Germans are not the German society is not well known for being the most progressive in terms of technology. Uh, to put it mildly. In many aspects, it's very analog. But my native Denmark, in Denmark, it's easy, and it's within just a few days. You go to the city hall. There's a service desk at any city hall. You don't even have to live in the same city. You can just go into any city hall in Denmark, and there's a citizen service desk where you have your driver's license renewed, or your passport, or whatever you have of official business. You can go there, and my son and I, we went there, and it literally took like, we even had the photographs taken in a photo booth, and it was immediately cleared, and they check, are the angles right, and you're not allowed to smile. You have to look in this camera in a certain angle, and all these things. It was immediately cleared. It was immediately done right, and within 24 hours we had our passports. I got a text, and it says, you can pick them up now. I mean, that's the best case scenario, but in many other countries, it's just not that easy getting your passport.
That sounds like a fantastic system. For
Yeah.
me, because I live in the country, it could be different. If I was in Melbourne and I went to the passport office, like that might expedite the situation if I
Hmm.
was able to go directly to the office. But when you live outside a capital city, I guess, where there is a direct passport office, all your passports get processed through the local post office, through Australia Post. So
Oh, okay, yeah.
you go down to your local post office with your money, with your application form, which you hopefully download online, or you can actually go to the post office and pick up a physical copy of the application for some people that
Hmm.
still, want a physical copy and don't want to do it, don't want to print, or don't have a printer to print it out online, should I say. So then you just print it out, fill in some details, and at Australia Post, they will then take the photo for you. So, like a white projector screen drops from the roof, they take the photo, process the photos for you there, charge you an extra $25 for your photos on top of your
Of
already
course.
$400
Yeah, yeah.
that you've paid, and they check off your identification that you take with you to say who you are, and they sign off on it, and then it goes away to the passport office, and then you get a slip in the mail from registered mail to say that your passport has arrived back at the local post office. So then you go down and show them ID, and they hand over your passport, and away you go. So
Wow.
hopefully these days, yeah, as quick as 10 days
Yeah,
sometimes, or
yeah,
in the country anyway. In the city, like I said, if you go to the passport office, maybe it's only a couple of days. I'm not sure.
yeah. And one thing I noticed with the Danish passport that I got 1.5 years ago, I also had to, actually, they took my fingerprint. I don't know if they do that in Australia, but they did in Denmark, and it's not. I don't know for what they use it. I think maybe it can be identification. Maybe on the chip physically, there's a chip in the passport. Maybe
Hmm.
there's a fingerprint diagram or something there. So I don't know, but it was an interesting
Sure.
extra security feature, I must say. And I was a little, whoa, what are you using that for?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember whether I actually had to do a fingerprint or not. No, I don't think you do if you're in Australia, but if you are outside of Australia, apparently then you do need to supply a fingerprint. Like, so I guess if you're renewing your passport outside of Australia, apparently you need to do some biometric data like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So
but
you
not
mean if
when
you
you,
go to like an embassy or consulate?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. I assume just to prove who you are, because in the end, I guess in reality, they've got all our data and all our all our
yeah,
metrics hidden somewhere or stored somewhere in some big, computer bank that's churning away in the background of life.
yeah. But I guess the more I think about it, maybe it does make sense because, for instance, traveling to the US, you go through immigrations. You have to leave your fingerprints. They will ask you to put your thumb on a scanner. And if there's some kind of connection, so that they can actually identify you with your passport, and the fingerprint stored there, Well, maybe it does make sense. Maybe it could even speed
Actually,
up the process. That would be a bonus.
that happens in Australia too. Now that I think about it, when you're coming back into the country, you have to drop the two thumbs on the
Yes.
scanner. If that's if you're using the smart gates anyway. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to put your passport in, and then you've got to put your two thumbs on the pad, and then it
Yeah.
prints you out a little white ticket, and off you go out the smart gate after that. And then
Uh,
you've got to show this little white ticket though when you go through customs on your way out to prove that you've logged into the country.
well, I guess there are countries where, because I'm thinking, in terms
Excuse
of,
me.
of speed and going through immigration and just getting out on the other
Oh,
side and start enjoying your travel. Because immigration and airport security is really just such a stressful struggle, really. So if modern technology can actually kind of ease that burden, that would be a nice bonus. But I'm not sure it's in every country's interest to
no,
actually ease the stress.
it would be great because,
Yeah.
like Australia being an island, we have pretty tight customs and biosecurity laws. But one of the things that I find really frustrating about Australia is that you still have to fill out your customs declaration on the plane on a paper card. Like,
Oh yes, I
you know,
remember.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, I mean, and I was just actually reading about this today. They've just actually started trialing the digital version, and it's going to be trialed starting next week on flights from Auckland to Brisbane with Qantas, and then hopefully they're going to look at rolling it out everywhere in the next 12 months because there's nothing worse than getting into the airport after a long flight. And for Australians, like most of us are flying from, the other side of the world, 20 odd hours, then having to stop at this desk, fill out a card with all your information on it to hand in. You go, just let me out.
Yes. At that point, you can't be bothered with that.
No, not at all. And see, sometimes some airlines are good. Some airlines give them out on the plane, so you can actually fill them in a couple of hours before you arrive, and that's okay. But filling out forms are still not ideal on a
Yeah.
plane at the best of times. But yeah, but it's even worse when you've got to stop and do them. So actually, when we came back from China only 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, the airline didn't hand them out, so that was a real pill because we'd been on the plane. Not that it was that long; it's still 12 hours from Beijing to Melbourne non-stop. So we actually grabbed a handful of them when we're in the airport, so we can pre-fill some out next time we go overseas and
Oh
have them
yeah,
in our
good call.
bags.
Yeah,
So then
yeah,
we can just sign them and put the date on them when we're coming through next
yeah,
time, instead of having to stop and do this on a desk where you're fighting with 400 other people who are coming off a plane for a little bit of room and a pen
yeah,
to fill this information in.
yeah. It's the bureaucracy, governmental bureaucracy at the borders are absolutely horrific, and you would think in this day and age that you constantly you hear about people being supervised and Big Brother is always watching you no matter what you do. I mean, you would think that you could also use this to your advantage, but it's just it's just not how it works.
Oh, all airports are not created even, that's for sure. And all
Yeah,
border security is not
no,
created
and, and
even.
and and that's another frustrating thing because they are not executing the same rules. I mean, it's
No.
it's you have one thing at Melbourne Airport, another thing at Munich, and they
Yeah.
will say, yeah, well, Munich have more advanced scanners, the newest in
Mm.
scanning your luggage, and that may all be true, but still, it's it sort of just creates an illusion of security. It's I mean, if you have
It does.
if you are of a if you have a sinister intent, if you really want to do harm to other people, I guess you can do it no matter what. But it's just
Like
you
this
go through.
is overkill, and
Yeah,
there's overkill. Like
yeah.
what really frustrates me in some airports is that, like, you'll go in initially and like you'll have to scan your bags and show your ticket, and then they let you into the area where you've actually then got to check your bag in if you're checking a bag under a
Mhm.
plane. But then you'll go to the boarding gate, and then some airports in Asia actually have a scanner all over again. And you go,
Yeah.
well, haven't I just checked into a secured area? Like, you scanned my bag once. How am I going to, per se, get a bomb or something into my bag
Yes.
within the space of this secured area again, like in the time it's taken me that I'm standing around here before I go and check into my next flight? And that frustrates me everywhere, because a lot of international flights are the same. Like, if you go from, say, Australia to Europe, and you've got to stop at like
Hong
Doha
Kong,
in Qatar
Doha.
or
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
you've got to scan your bags and check in all over again. Like, not your big bag, not if you've checked it underneath, but your carry on luggage, And you
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
well, I've scanned it once. Like, can't they just, put a tag on them,
Yeah.
or buy, and go, okay, why do we have to scan it again?
Well,
I,
it's. I agree. I agree. And you scan in security, and you could enter a secured area. The thing
yeah.
about that is that you once you're in there, you can order a steak in a restaurant,
Well,
and
that's it.
just take
That's it.
the steak knife with you on board.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, but I I always say, that there's a lot of business in this, because they make sure that you cannot
Oh,
take your bottled water, you cannot take
definitely.
any beverage, and you have to buy
Nah.
it in the airport terminal,
Yeah. That's
and it's good
ridiculous,
money.
isn't it? Oh,
Yeah. In general, we will cover this, dear listener. We will cover this
I've
later
got
on.
so many gripes about
Yeah,
this that I could go on forever about different
this is
things
an
about flying
episode in
that
itself.
that
This,
annoys me. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So, but
and I
yeah,
think
it's
as I've got older, it annoys me even more than it did when I was younger.
yeah. I mean, even when you were younger, back in our day, 25 years ago, it wasn't
Yeah.
that crazy. With nine
Ah,
eleven, obviously,
yeah.
security is a different thing,
Yeah.
and I can sort of understand that for
Yeah.
a lot of reasons. So I'm not saying
Yeah.
security is a hoax completely, but there's a lot of things there that, come on, use technology, make sure it's as easy for the travelers as at all possible.
Possible. Yeah. I agree with you
But I don't
there.
think the authorities really care about that. And
No,
frankly, sometimes I
of
think
course not.
they make it hard for you
Yeah.
to, as a traveler, make an extra effort. Sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's just, yeah.
And I carry like a lot of camera gear and stuff when we go
Yeah.
traveling, obviously, because, for people who don't know, me and my wife run a few different travel websites. So I'm always carrying a laptop and a drone, possibly, and, other cameras. And I have to pull them out nearly every time I go through somewhere, like, especially the laptop. Even though I must admit, last time in Australia, they've now lapsed that. You don't have to pull the laptop out of the bag
Same in
anymore.
Munich
But
now. Same in Munich now. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but in other countries, you still certainly have to, and some
Yeah.
countries even go to the extreme. Like when we were in China, you couldn't have aerosol, couldn't have deodorant or anything. I'm not sure whether that's normal. I don't carry deodorant, so I'm not quite sure. But you couldn't take aerosol on the plane. And my sister, she had a power bank that they confiscated too, because it didn't meet some sort of standard. Like, so yeah, so different countries,
Oh,
yeah, different strokes for different folks, I guess. But hey, if you want to
yeah.
go to their countries, that's what you got to deal with, didn't it?
Even in the same country. I mean, Munich and Frankfurt, they don't have the same procedures. I mean, to begin with, when you had, for instance, I don't know if that's the case in Australia as well, but you have to, in a sealed plastic bag, you have to put in, if you have carry-on,
Yeah.
in your carry-on, if you have any toiletries, like toothpaste and a deo and whatever, you have to put it in a sealed, um, transparent plastic bag. And the standards for these plastic bags are not the same in each airport in Germany. So even within the same country, it's just, there are different. And obviously, they will charge you €1 to get
For a plastic bag.
for the right plastic bag.
Yeah, I'm
Obviously,
sure they
yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Most
So
definitely.
just to say,
Oh,
there's business in this as well. Absolutely.
Frankfurt, that's a nightmare, that airport. We
Yeah.
won't go into that today.
No, no. Anyways, dear listener, we hope you have enjoyed this first episode of Southern Summers and Northern Winters. We intend to do this on on a regular basis, when time
Most
allows.
definitely.
Yeah, when time allows, Mark and I will hook up on a call and chat about these things. And we will also be we have a Facebook page. You can find us.
We do. We have a Facebook page called Southern Summers and Northern Winters
Exactly.
podcast, and we also have an Instagram channel called the same thing. I haven't published much on either of them yet, but once we get this episode aired and put out, then I will take some snippets and some things like that from it and
Mhm.
put a few infographics from things we say, and we'll see some content on there. And maybe Anders will take some pictures when he's away on holidays next week of himself
Oh
having
yeah,
fun
I forgot to
somewhere,
mention.
and
Yeah, I
we can
forgot to
put on
mention.
there. And
Already
and
next week, one of us
yeah,
is traveling. I'm going to Vienna in Austria with my family. It's in a 5 hour train drive from Munich. But yeah, yeah. So most definitely, I will. I will
yeah, and
send a send a
I've got like
greeting.
2 billion travel photos floating around. So yeah, we've both got travel plans. Anders is going there. I haven't got any until December, but I'm going to China and to Thailand. So I'm actually hoping that we can even do a show why I'm in China, possibly,
Oh, that would be nice if you could
and
hook
even in
up.
Thailand.
Yeah, if you could hook up with like a skyline in the background.
Yeah, that's it. We'll see what happens. We might be able to do some over there. And I've got an 18-year-old daughter, 19-year-old daughter that lives in China. So if that's of any interest, maybe we can hook her in
Oh,
to
that would
doing
be
the
nice.
podcast with us and ask her about what life is like in China for a 19-year-old Western redheaded girl that with pale skin that lives in China.
Yeah, yeah. Your daughter is on your travel blog and on your social media. You've already posted some
Yeah,
content, and I could only imagine. I mean, like she looks very Western in that
yeah,
context.
definitely,
And I think you even
definitely. So
mentioned that the area in China where she is well, it's
yeah,
mostly just Asians.
yep. So I'll try and tee her up, and then December when we're in China, we'll try and do a podcast episode from
We should
China
do
with
that. We should do
feature
that.
her, and we can ask her some telling questions about what life's like in China.
Absolutely. It's actually a very good example of what we started to talk about, bringing
Yeah,
raising your kids up, and Willow is really a world citizen. I've
yeah.
met her a couple of times, and it's just really, you can tell that she has world experience, and that's just
She moved straight out of home at age 18 and straight to China. So from a town of 4,000 people to a city of 10 million people. Bang.
yeah.
But we can do a whole episode on that
Yeah.
when she's with us, and yeah, so I should be able to line that up when we're in China, I think.
It'll be interesting, to follow in the years to come where she will go. It's really
Well,
yeah.
yeah, she was only going for 6 months, but yeah, that's going to be extended. So yeah, there's a whole lot to go on there yet, but we'll see anyway.
Yes, yes, we will. So thank you very much for joining us. If you
We
have
appreciate
any
it.
questions and anything you would like us to cover in this podcast series, please do write us. Say hello. Just get in touch. We would love
That's
to
it.
hear from you, and we would also love to, from anywhere. Just
Yeah.
send us your greetings and tell us where you live, and we will
Because
make
as you
sure.
can tell, me and Anders love talking about travel. So we're happy to talk about travel with anyone. So drop us
Exactly.
a comment and we will say hello, have a chat about whatever you want us to chat about. But when Anders publishes this podcast, he'll leave the links in the show notes for our YouTube and not our YouTube, our Instagram and our Facebook.
Yes, exactly. For now, we could even discuss a YouTube because this is a Zoom call. We're actually recording this, but
Yeah.
yeah, then you have to think about your appearance there as well. So right now we just talk. So
This is it. I'd have to get a white screen to put behind
yeah,
me,
a nice
or we could blur
backdrop
the
and
screen
everything.
like you do. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. We could be a
yeah,
background everywhere, couldn't we? We could
yeah.
have,
So,
be
but
in the South
it's
Pacific or
it's all
something.
to come. It's all to come. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's an
very much
exciting
for.
start.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back soon.
We
Bye.
will. Bye.
Bye.